Gonna shoot me down, 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 down. Now I'm bulletproof because of you, because of you.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to chapel. Are you guys excited to be in the theater? Something a little different? With the nice comfy seats. All right, as you're still making your way in, go ahead and grab a seat as quickly as you can, because we're going to try to get started here in just a minute. Hey, if you guys didn't know, number one, no school tomorrow, so don't show up to school, but you can clap for that. Number two, though, is Valentine's Day, and so no matter, all right, listen, shh. I'm going to give you a little intro to what we're doing, okay? No matter if you're currently in a relationship, not in a relationship, don't want to be one day, want to be one day, no matter where you land on that scale, guys, listen. All of us have relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's a dating relationship. One day you might have a family. I mean, there's different types of relationships in all of our lives. And so every year we try to take a few moments in a chapel setting to learn from those on our campus that have a lot of wisdom and experience and insight to offer to you guys. Individuals that care about you, that love you guys, and that want the best for you. And so this morning, we're going to have four individuals, two couples, that they all work here. You guys know them. You know their names. You have class with them. You've served with them in different events and things like that. We love having them here at TKA, and they're excited to share with you guys about relationships and how we can best learn from them, all right? So I'm going to introduce you guys to our panelists. You guys can make as much noise as you want for each of the couples. Not yet. I haven't said anything yet. All right. Our first couple, you guys know them, you love them. Some of you guys serve with them as prefects. You guys help with peer tutoring, everything else. I mean, they do so much on our campus. Would you please help me welcome Mr. and Mrs. Kolar to the stage? All right. What an entrance, man. All right, next up. Whether you're taking Latin or a language, or sometimes his classes are another language to me, would you please help me welcome Mr. and Mrs. Beck. Okay. All right. Now that we got that out of our systems, all right. This is what we're going to do, okay? We're going to start off with a little game, and I'm going to need your guys' help for this game, okay? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to see how well you guys know each other. So on the right of your chair, there's a whiteboard. There's a little cloth and a marker, okay? I'm going to ask you as a couple a question. You are both going to write down what you think the answer is. And then together, we're going to count down from 3. We're going to say 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to flip your board and see if you guys have the same answer, okay? So we're going to see how well they know each other after several years of being married, okay? All right, which you guys will talk about in a few minutes. So the first question is for Mr. and Mrs. Kolar, okay? This question is about Mr. Kolar, but you each are going to answer, okay? What is Mr. Kolar's biggest pet peeve? So write down when you think it is. And we're going to see if they match up, all right? So before you reveal, you got your answers? We good? Okay, all right, ready? All together, 3, 2, 1, reveal. Traffic! All right, good job. Now I will say, I did not give them these questions ahead of time, all right? So this is 100% authentic and true. Okay. Next question for Mr. and Mrs. Beck. This is a question about Mr. Beck, but you both will answer, okay? If Mr. Beck could only listen to one song for the rest of his life, which song would it be? I may have chosen this one intentionally. All right, so before you reveal, you guys got your answers? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, flip. I was gonna say doxology. What did you say? The Great Adventure? Okay, all right. Yeah. Mr. Beck said he could do karaoke if you wanted. All right. Okay, back to the Kolars, all right? Here you go. This one is about Mrs. Kolar, okay? What is Mrs. Kolar's idea of a perfect date? Mrs. Kolar's idea of a perfect date. Let's see. Let's see if they go 2 for 2 here. All right, we got your answers? All right, you guys with me? Here we go. 3, 2, 1, flip. Oh, that's sweet. The next one. Okay, so Mrs. Kolar said the next one. Mr. Kolar said a weekend getaway or travel. All right, which technically, I guess it could be the next one. All right, that's fair. All right, last question, Mr. and Mrs. Beck. This question is about Mrs. Beck, okay? What was Mrs. Beck's first impression of you, Mr. Beck? When you first met, what was her first impression of you? I can see Mrs. Beck's answer, and it's funny. Okay, you guys got your answers? All right, last one, all together, loud and proud. 3, 2, 1. Okay, wait. So, Mr. Beck, you said perfect and amazing. Okay. And then Mrs. Beck said a Greek nerd. So, all right. That's fair. All right, give it up for them for that game. You guys can put your whiteboards down. One of the things that I wanted them to share as we get started here is just a little bit about how they met, where they met, and when that was. And so they're going to tell you a little bit about where they met and how they met and that story. We have some photos, so we'll show Mr. and Mrs. Kolar first. So if you guys can share a little bit about where you guys met. This is from your guys' wedding, obviously. So, I know, so cute, right? Look at that one, wow. So, we'll leave this one up. You guys tell us a little bit of the story. All right, guys, shh, listen, we're gonna tell us a little bit of their story.
All right, we met, where's our 10th graders? All right, 10th grade. She moved from Kentucky up to Ohio in 10th grade, and it was the first day of school. She walked into homeroom, and it was like, wow. So we met in 10th grade, dated in 10th grade. She can give you more. I like to stick to the Cliff Notes. She gives you the full story, the novel. We dated a little bit in 10th grade through middle of 11th grade. Where's our juniors? Through 11th grade. She broke my heart at Christmas time. So some of you have gone through that or are going through it. I still don't know why to this day why she broke up with me, but it was in 11th grade. We were enemies for 6 months, didn't speak a word to one another. This was actually the only banquet in high school we went to. It was homecoming of our junior year. So that was in the fall. She broke up at Christmas. We were good friends our senior year, and she could talk more about that. And then, of course, we got married after our second year of college. So we've been married for 41 years.
Wow. 41 years, give it up. 41 years, that's awesome. All right, now, okay, the Becks, you guys also have a story about how you guys met, where and when. We have some photos, too, of when you guys first met. So tell us a little bit. This is from your wedding, obviously. So tell us a little bit about where, when, how you guys met.
So I was a freshman at the Florida State University, go Noles. Mr. Beck was a junior, and I joined a Christian sorority on campus that my boss was the admin advisor for, and we used to partner with a Christian fraternity. And I kept hearing at our first mutual event about this math major who took classical Greek for fun, or biblical Greek for fun. I was like, who is this person? And they're just like, you gotta meet him, you gotta meet him. Well, I did meet him that night at our event, but it was actually a Bible weekend at the church in Tallahassee. And I have, of course, I'm also a nerd, so I had an archaeological Bible. And I had, been flipping through it or whatever, and it was open to Masada, my Latin students. We'll know what that is by the end of Latin 2. And he just kind of approached me up in line, and he goes, do you know what this is about? And I said, yes, I do. I'm a classics major. And so over the next couple of months, we got to know each other. We were a little old-fashioned. It's called Facebook Messenger now, but we got to know each other on the precursor to that and iMessage. And through church and through the Christian fraternity and sorority. And so we went to a couple of formals and semi-formals. And he graduated before I did, but stayed to be close by. And so we got married 2 days after I graduated college. We drove from Tallahassee to Jacksonville. And then we started seminary together. How many years ago? I don't know. We've been married for 14 years, so that's all I remember. So that was fun.
All right, so we have 14 and 41, which we didn't plan that, but you guys have been together for some time, and obviously when you've been together for that long, you learn a lot about one another, but you also go through a lot together as a couple. And so our first question is kind of describe a difficult season in your life, and I'll come to the Kolars first. Describe maybe a difficult season in your guys' lives as a couple that you encountered together, that you went through together. What happened, maybe give us a little context, and then how did you guys get through that as a married couple, and what are some kind of tips, advice that you would give to students as they're walking through some difficult seasons as well?
Well, I'll let Mrs. Kolar share the story, but before she does, James talks about count it all joy when you fall into trials, not if. So you're always going to face difficulties. As a married couple, we never had difficulties with each other, but obviously you have difficulties that are out of your control most of the time, but you face as a couple or even as individuals. And I learned long ago that a lot of times it's because we ask the wrong question. When something comes in our way, we always cry out, why? Why is this happening? Or what? Or even how? When you really should be asking who. And when I ask the question who, it always leads me to an almighty, loving Father who is righteous, just, forgiving, merciful, and he says his ways are above our ways, his thoughts are above our thoughts, that we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, that he's working all things together for good, that he is the potter, I'm in the clay. And when I have that perspective, when the difficulties come, it's easier with a godly perspective to be able to answer the who and trust and put my life in his hands and know that he has the best for me.
So when I was your age, Scripture talks about if we seek after him, he'll give us the desires of our heart. Well, I will tell you as a young high school young lady, the desire that I had was to be a wife and a mom, probably above anything else. So at your age, right, you write your list of all of your hopes and your dreams, and at the end of the day, I just could not wait to be a mom. When I was 16, I was put in the hospital. I had a series of physical difficulties, and I was put in the hospital. And at the end of that journey, I was told that I would never be able to have children. So that was really tough, especially at that age. because I felt like, but God, that's been the desire of my heart, is just to be a wife and a mom and to raise children. And as we dated and things got more serious when we were in college, we had to have those tough decisions. And at that time, I had to share with him that I would never be able to have children. And I didn't want to disappoint, and it was a strong desire that I had. And this amazing man just looked at me and he said, but dear, if this is the journey that God has us on, then he has placed us in a situation where we can adopt children who do not have a mom and a dad, and we can be their parents, and we just need to walk through those doors and see what God has for us. And so that's kind of part of a season that was very difficult that I had to let go of. A lot of times we make all these lists of things that we have desires to do, the colleges we want to go to, the people we want to meet, the careers that we want to have, and we want God to kind of sign off on that. God, will you approve all of these things? Will you be on my side? Will you be in my corner for these things? And on the flip side, he's basically saying, oh, my child, I want you to sign off on what I want your life journey to look like. And that might be blank. You don't know what that looks like. But he loves us so much, and he has a perfect plan for you. And I could share story after story of his faithfulness over the last 41 years as we watch God carry us and take care of us. And he was so faithful. We applied for adoption, just to kind of wrap that up. We applied for adoption. He was getting ready to go on a trip overseas. We were on our way to be missionaries in Spain. And so we were trying to get everything in place before we left. And I called the doctors. They were continuing to do tests on me. And I called the doctor about something totally different. And they basically said on the phone at the airport when he was getting ready to fly overseas to take care of some future things, they said, ma'am, there's really nothing wrong with you. You're expecting. And we were in the process of sending in all of those adoption things, totally open to what God would have for us. And the Lord saw fit to give us a child. So I think sometimes he takes us on steps to teach us so many valuable things. And we learned so much in that process. And then on the flip side, he ended up blessing us so very much.
Thank you guys for sharing. And now you're blessed with how many grandchildren?
We have 3 sons and 9 amazing grandchildren.
9 amazing grandchildren. And it's so encouraging to see what the Lord has done in your guys' lives, and for us to kind of take that journey back with you to see, okay, in that season, you had no idea what was going to happen. And it was so
we did get a
unknown.
call from the adoption agency with children when I was pregnant with my second. So it was pretty special.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's so cool to see God's faithfulness in your guys' lives. And I know, Mr. and Mrs. Beck, you guys also have stories and things that have happened in your guys' relationship or things that you guys have faced together as a couple. Can you guys also just share a little bit about your guys' story and what brought you through that and encouraged you in that season?
So we also have an adoption story, but that's actually not what I'm going to talk about. If you ever want to hear about it, I love adoption. Actually, one of our most challenging seasons was when we moved to TKA in 2021. And so I know those of you who are seniors who had me in ancient history kind of saw this at the forefront. But we were experiencing several new stressful changes in our life, right? We were moving to a new part of Florida, out of Louisiana. We had new jobs. We had a 6-month-old baby. But the really difficult thing was our eldest son, who was 4 at the time, started exhibiting some special needs that were becoming more prominent, and we didn't really know what to do. And so it was like every day I was receiving a phone call. We were having to pick him up constantly. We weren't sure if I was even going to be able to continue teaching. And so that's our son who's adopted. And so I wanted also to be a mom, and it wasn't happening until about 7 years into our marriage. But as we're trying to figure out how best to help our eldest son, it was just a really humbling experience. And it really brought us to the ends of ourselves. It meant that our plans were not God's plans, but that he had something so much better. We had to really lean into one another for the emotional struggles. There were lots of tears. And we had to learn to adapt to a new way of life without our family next to us. And I just want to tell you guys, there's no parenting, there's no adulting book, there's no relation book out there that's going to cover everything that happens in your life. But what was really helpful for both of us is that we had a shared worldview. We had, when we were dating, we had decided that these are the principles that we wanted in our lives, and if we were to have children, these are the principles that we wanted that were based on the Bible. And I think in a world that really, especially in our country, that really emphasizes individualism and you do you, what's best for you, I think it's hard because all relationships are hard, whether they're friendships or romantic ones. But marriage is probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, and parenting is definitely on top of that, especially with a special needs son. And so you really have to lean on the other person. You're committed to that person. You're not just going to leave. And another thing that the Lord has blessed, I think, all Christians with is that we're not meant to do it alone. And so we had the community that was here at TKA, but also our church family really come alongside us. And so I can tell you countless stories of teachers at this school who became our family to this day, who are still trying to help us figure it out, like on a regular basis. And I think that's one of the unique parts of TKA. I've worked at 4 other schools, but I can really go to anyone on campus and they'll pray with me and they'll share scripture with me and so forth. And so these difficult seasons are wonderful opportunities for you to grow closer individually with the Lord, but also with the person you're in a relationship with. But you also have to realize that you're not sovereign, you're not in control of your life, and I think that's really hard when you're like, I got to do it myself. And that God has placed people in your life to speak truth to. And so especially those of you who are at the beginning of high school or those who are going to be going to college soon, think about the people that you're in relationship with as friends, because those are going to help you whether you're in a romantic relationship or not, and that you're coming from like a shared worldview, a biblical worldview. Because I'm gonna tell you, sometimes life doesn't make sense. Sometimes you encounter tragedies or unexplained circumstances, and those are the people that you're gonna, who are gonna bring truth to you, and they're gonna pray for you, they'll bring meals for you, and so forth. And so you don't live, your relationship is not built in a vacuum, it's built in a community of believers.
Thank you for sharing. And something that you each touched on was this idea that, at the core of your not only dating relationship, engagement, but also obviously marriage is this relationship with Jesus, and that God's at the center of this relationship. And I know, obviously, I've heard that a lot from students too, of like trying to figure out, okay, if I'm in a relationship, or whether it's a friendship or dating relationship, as you were just saying, Ms. Beck, like no matter what the relationship is, how do I make God the center of that relationship? So I'm going to stay down with Mr. and Mrs. Beck and ask you guys that question as far as like when students are trying to figure this out. It's like, okay, I know kind of in my mind I need to make God the center of all my relationships, but what does that actually look like? How have you guys done that, and how could you offer some advice to students as well?
One cool thing about our relationship, I think, is the things that we've had to do a few times together in the different places we've lived or moved to, is find a church home, find a community to be a part of. When I was growing up, when I was in your shoes in middle school, elementary school, high school, every Sunday if I was in town at home, I was waking up, getting in the car with my parents and going to the same church that we all went to as a family. When I got to college, I had friends from high school, and they got there a week before I did, and they called me up and said, hey, Stephen, Mr. Beck, they didn't call me Mr. Beck. They said, hey, we went to this church this week. You got to go with us next week. And so I went with them that week. And then for the next 4 years, every Sunday I was in town at college, I went to that same church that I had started going to the very first time. That's where I met my wife there, through our shared communities and organizations we were part of. At the end of college, it was across the street from that church that I proposed. And then it was a few months later, back in my hometown, at my home church, that we got married. So all of that was kind of not really decided for me, it just kind of happened. But then we got married, we graduated college, we moved off to a new place, and then we had to make decisions for ourselves as a couple. What are we going to do with our lives? What church are we going to be part of? how are we going to minister? What's going to be, those things, those activities in our lives? And one cool thing I think that's been a part of our relationship, that the question has not been, if we're going to do Bible study together, if we're going to do ministry together, if we're going to go to church, but where are we going to go? What are we going to do? How are we going to live that out? And so I think just making that a priority, making that the question in your relationship. It's not about, if you're going to do something, but just make it just a non-debate, a non-discussion. You're going to do these things. Just how are you going to make that play out in your own relationships together? I think that's been helpful for us, just to set those priorities right from day one, and then just live it out from there.
Super practical advice. I know I hear from students who are like, I'm just so busy, but we'll make time and we will prioritize the things that are important to us. And so, as Mr. Beck said, if you prioritize that in your life, in your relationships, you will see the payoff and you will see the fruit of when you make that a priority in your life. So on that note, Mr. and Mrs. Kolar, you guys have already shared with us kind of how you guys met and some of the journey that God has brought you through. And I know for a lot of students, sometimes they'll look to you guys and say, man, 41 years together, 2 kids, 9 grandchildren, like how do I get that? And sometimes we'll ask, like, what's the secret recipe? Like, what do I do to get that? And they might be wondering that, they might want that one day. And even if you're not thinking that yet, you might even just want, like, hey, I just want someone, whether it's a romantic relationship or just a friend, that gets me like Mr. and Mrs. Kolar get each other. So the question is, what is the secret to a long-lasting, healthy relationship? Any tips, words of advice for the students?
Sure. My dad gave me some advice. He was married for over 50 years. And he just said to me, my two brothers, he says, the key to the long-lasting relationship is always say to your wife, yes, dear. And it's worked. I even used it this morning. So it is
proof that it works.
Yes, dear. So all joking aside, it is true though. It is a great thing to be able to say to her for 41 years prior. But for us, it's going back to our story in 10th grade in high school. It's always having the same passion and desires. When we met, I already knew she had a passion to go into full-time ministry. At that time, I didn't. A year later, God called me into full-time ministry. And it's just, we've always had the same passion and desire to serve the Lord, which led us overseas with Word of Life for 15 years and then back here in the States and being here at King's Academy for well over 20 years. So I'll let her share a little bit more about our life verses together and anything else she wants to add to that.
So some verses that we claimed early on in our marriage, and I brought it on pink index card, is Psalm 37, and I just wanted to share these with you. It says, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. So we have had these same passions and desires, not that we're perfect in any way. It's a life journey that we'll never arrive to or attain to. But at the end of the day, we want to be serving the Lord and doing and being obedient to what he's called us to. From the very beginning, I can't say how thankful I am that the Lord brought my husband into my life. He is just my rock and my soulmate and my very, very best friend. And back we were seniors in high school, we were in a class together, and the idea behind it was kind of learning what adult life would look like. So our teacher divided us all up randomly, put students together and said, okay, you two are married, figure out your life. We want careers, how many children, your budget, like just all this life planning. And so our teacher put us together. And it was our senior year of high school. We were best friends at that time. And so we did our report, which I brought with me right here. So it is handwritten on notebook paper, and the rest of it is typed on a typewriter. It's kind of yellow and whatnot, but we pulled it out last night. When we got married, our teacher wrapped it up and gave it to us as a wedding gift. And so it's just really special because when we look at this report, some of it's come true. And I think it's because our desires and our passions have been united from the very beginning. And it's just been neat to see that kind of all unfold.
I love that story. And something that you guys can, I could hear the desire to clap.
Can I share one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
One more thing too, this has been super special in our relationship. Way back at the beginning of our marriage, we decided that instead of at those special times when gifts would be appropriate, birthdays and Christmas and things like that, we decided that instead of gift giving, we wanted to make memories instead. So it's something we've done since way early on in our marriage, and I think honestly that has really enhanced our relationship and brought us closer because we spend so much more time together. We spend time making memories and talking and communicating and going on trips and all those kinds of things. So that's a...
So you got to be in sync, and I think that's a big thing that you touched on. Mr. and Mrs. Beck, I'm going to come to you guys for the last question. Leading into Valentine's Day, there might be some students that are wondering, okay, should I make a move? Or maybe they're in a relationship and it's like, you should get out of that one. So, sometimes students come to us and they're like, hey, maybe you're wondering, should I date this person? And you can see clear signs, maybe not yet. So the question to you guys is, how do you know if you're ready for a relationship? What does that look like? How can you, both spiritually, emotionally, be ready for that type of thing?
I don't know if I have a satisfying answer to that question for Valentine's Day, but I can try something. I was gonna say there's this crazy thing going around the world. It seems like today where people are saying oh, I'm gonna wait to settle down. I need to check all these things off my my life checklist. I need to graduate, get a master's, get a PhD, get a second PhD, get a job, get a house, get another house, have pets, all these things. And, then maybe sometime down the line, I'll be ready for a marriage then. And then, maybe 5, 10, 15 years, then maybe we'll be ready for kids. Just waiting to do all those things later in life. I don't think I'm still ready for a relationship. I don't know. I don't know if there's a point where it's just going to be just a light bulb saying, okay, you're ready now. I was reminded of the story in the Bible of Moses. When God called Moses to deliver the people out of Egypt, and Moses was, complaining to God, saying, "Oh no, I'm not that person. I can't do that thing. I can't speak. I can't do all this stuff." And I wrote down what God said back to Moses. He said, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" Right? I'm not saying marriage and leading a family is leading a whole country out of slavery into another country. But I think there is something to it where if God's the one in control of your life, then I think he will be the one to make you ready. He'll be the one to plot the path and to give you those steps.
Yeah, and here's the thing, I feel like I can't answer now.
You can finish your thought, and then we'll finish your thought.
So here's the thing is, let me just say something really quickly. Here's the thing. Your other person, they're not meant to fulfill everything in you. If you're just trying to do it to check a box, wait, okay? But marriage and relationships are not meant to just make you happy. They're really meant to make you holy. And while he's my best friend, and I would much rather hang out with him than just most other people, and like just sit with him and be quiet, than talk and hours with other people, like have fun, but also just think about it this way. Like, it's not gonna just be this magic Band-Aid and make everything better, okay? You have to put investment and time and effort into it, and it can be one of the most special things ever, but don't just like be like, hey, like, and expect that it's gonna be this easy road, because it's not always easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah. What I was just going to say in conclusion was, it's not about being ready for a relationship with another person. It's about, are you on the path that God has set for you? Are you getting closer to God? Then God's going to bring, on that same path, on that same journey closer to him, God's going to bring someone to bring you closer to him and to bring you closer to each other at the same time.
Yeah. If you prioritize that, he'll align you. Hey, can we thank our panelists for sharing with us, and Mr. and Mrs. Beck, Mr. and Mrs. Kolar. Thank you guys for sharing. And I would encourage you, ask them more questions. Ask others that you guys look up to on this campus. Ask them questions. We'd love to be that support and guide to you guys.
Nothing like living